Welcome back to Cheating Stories Hub. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate each one of you. Before we dive into today's compelling story, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. Now, let's get into this tale of betrayal, cunning strategy, and ultimate triumph. Nathan Caldwell stood in his glass-walled office at Caldwell and Associates, reviewing files for his latest high-profile client. At 41, Nathan had built a reputation as one of Manhattan's most formidable criminal defense attorneys. His success rate spoke for itself. 95% of his cases ended in his client's favor. The antique grandfather clock in the corner chimed midnight, its deep tones echoing through the quiet office. It was another late night, but Rachel, his wife, would understand. She always did, or so Nathan told himself. His phone buzzed with a text from her. "Don't forget about the gala tomorrow." Peter Langston confirmed his attendance. Nathan's jaw tightened at the mention of Langston, a wealthy venture capitalist who had re-entered their social circle months ago through mutual friends. Something about the man set Nathan's instincts on edge, a feeling sharpened by his 2 decades as a defense attorney. He gathered his briefcase and left for home, a brownstone nestled in the Upper West Side. The house symbolized everything he had achieved, a scholarship kid from a modest upbringing who clawed his way through Yale Law and built a life most could only dream of. The kitchen lights were on when he arrived. Through the window, he saw Rachel moving about, her phone pressed to her ear, laughing in a way that struck him as rehearsed. As Nathan approached the door, her voice dropped to a whisper. "I have to go," she said hurriedly. "He's home." Nathan entered, and Rachel quickly slipped her phone into her pocket. She was wearing a dress he hadn't seen before, designer by the look of it. Her auburn hair was freshly styled, her makeup flawless despite the late hour. "Late meeting with the charity board?" Nathan asked, keeping his tone neutral. "The hospital benefit needs extra attention this year," Rachel replied, busying herself with rearranging the already spotless countertop. "Peter Langston has some excellent fundraising ideas." Nathan poured himself a whiskey, his sharp eyes catching the faint hesitation in her movements. "Langston seems to have ideas about everything these days," he said, taking a measured sip. Rachel's hand faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "He's been very generous with his time. The board is lucky to have him." Nathan said nothing, letting the silence hang heavy between them. "I'm heading to bed," Rachel announced, her voice too bright. "Don't stay up too late." Nathan watched her leave, noting the slight tremor in her steps. When her footsteps faded upstairs, he moved silently through the house, pausing outside his children's rooms. He was about to knock on his daughter's door when he heard his 15-year-old son Ethan's voice inside. "If they split up, who would you pick?" Nathan froze. His 17-year-old daughter Claire responded, her words shattering his composure. "Peter, obviously. He's way cooler than Dad, and he promised me that trip to Tokyo for spring break. Plus, Mom says he's probably our biological father anyway. It makes sense why we both have green eyes like him." The whiskey glass nearly slipped from Nathan's grip. He caught it just in time, his years of courtroom discipline keeping his breathing steady. "Did Mom actually say that?" Ethan asked, his voice hesitant. "Yeah," Claire replied casually. "At lunch last week. She said she and Peter were serious in college, but something happened, and they broke up. Then she met Dad. She said Dad wouldn't understand if he found out." Nathan backed away, the walls of his carefully constructed life crumbling around him. Memories resurfaced with new, painful clarity: Rachel's surprise pregnancy early in their relationship, her insistence on maintaining certain social ties, and how Langston had re-entered their lives. Back in his study, Nathan pulled up family photos on his laptop. How had he missed it? Claire and Ethan's green eyes, their sharp features, they all mirrored Langston's, not his. His phone buzzed with a message from Rachel, don't forget the school tuition payments for next semester. Love you. Nathan stared at the message, his attorney's mind already analyzing every detail. Rachel had ensured all financial responsibilities fell on him while subtly alienating their children. It was clear now, she and Langston were orchestrating something. Nathan opened a secure file he kept hidden, pulling up information he'd once considered unrelated. The hospital board's expenses had ballooned, with repeated charges to high-end restaurants and hotels on days Rachel claimed to be at meetings. It wasn't charity work, it was a cover. His thoughts raced. He needed answers, and allies. Nathan spent the remainder of the night piecing together fragments of his crumbling life. The woman he had trusted with his heart and built a family with had been orchestrating a betrayal so profound it left him numb. But beneath the shock, a cold resolve took root: he would uncover the truth and dismantle whatever scheme Rachel and Peter Langston were planning. The following morning, Nathan awoke on the couch in his study, the faint glow of his laptop illuminating stacks of case files. He checked his phone and found a text from his son Ethan. "Can you give me a ride to school today? Mom says she's busy." Nathan's chest tightened. Rachel's priorities were shifting, and the children, much like him, were becoming pawns in her game. He replied with a simple "on my way" before grabbing his keys. As they drove through the bustling streets of Manhattan, Nathan glanced at Ethan, his son's profile bathed in morning sunlight. There were so many questions he wanted to ask, but he forced himself to remain silent. For now, he needed to play it cool. "Everything okay, Dad?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence. Nathan forced a smile. "Of course. Just a busy day ahead." Ethan nodded, accepting the explanation. As they pulled up to the school, Nathan stopped him before he got out. "Hey, Ethan, if you ever hear anything strange around the house, anything about me, Mom, or Peter, I want you to tell me. No matter what." Ethan frowned, clearly puzzled. "What kind of strange stuff?" "Just anything that doesn't sit right," Nathan replied. "Can you promise me that?" "Sure, Dad," Ethan said with a shrug, before hopping out and disappearing into the crowd of students. Back at the brownstone, Nathan found Rachel in the living room, typing away on her laptop. She looked up and offered him a tight smile. "You're back earlier than I expected," she said, her tone casual. "I rearranged my schedule," Nathan replied, sitting across from her. He studied her closely, watching for cracks in her polished demeanor. "I thought we could discuss Peter." Rachel's fingers paused on the keyboard for a split second before she resumed typing. "Peter? What about him?" "I've been noticing his name comes up a lot," Nathan said evenly. "Between the hospital board meetings and the gala, it seems like he's practically a part of the family." Rachel laughed, a forced and brittle sound. "Don't be ridiculous. Peter's just a generous supporter of the board." "And the trip to Tokyo he's been promising Claire? The luxury dinners? The sudden increase in extracurricular expenses?" Nathan leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Generosity doesn't explain all of that." Rachel's smile faltered, and she closed her laptop. "Nathan, you've been under a lot of stress with work. Maybe you're reading into things." "I don't read into things," Nathan said sharply. "I read facts. So why don't you tell me what's really going on?" Rachel's eyes darted away, her practiced composure slipping. "You're being paranoid." Nathan leaned back, letting the silence stretch. "Paranoid," he repeated, almost to himself. "You know, I've spent my entire career trusting my instincts. They've kept me alive in and out of court. So maybe you're right, Rachel. Maybe I am paranoid. But maybe, just maybe, I'm right." Before Rachel could respond, Nathan stood and walked to his study, leaving her alone with her crumbling defenses. In the privacy of his office, Nathan reached out to the one person he trusted with sensitive matters, his old friend and private investigator, Marcus Hayes. "Marcus," Nathan began as soon as the call connected, "I need your help." "Name it," Marcus replied without hesitation. "I need everything you can dig up on Peter Langston. Start with his time at Columbia and work your way forward. I want details, business ventures, personal relationships, criminal records, everything." Marcus paused. "This sounds serious. What's going on?" Nathan hesitated. "I can't say much yet. Let's just say I think Peter Langston is orchestrating something big, and it involves my family." "I'll start digging right away," Marcus assured him. "Give me 48 hours. The next evening, Marcus delivered his preliminary findings. Nathan sat in his study, his laptop open to an encrypted file Marcus had sent. "Langston's got a history of shady dealings," Marcus explained over the phone. "He's a master at staying one step ahead of the law. Most of his ventures are clean on the surface, but dig a little deeper, and you'll find lawsuits, NDAs, and offshore accounts." "And Rachel?" Nathan asked, his voice tight. "She and Langston go way back," Marcus confirmed. "They met during their undergrad years. There are gaps in the timeline, but one thing's clear, they were close. Very close." Nathan closed his eyes, his suspicions solidifying into certainty. "What about recent activity?" "Langston's been transferring large sums of money to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands," Marcus continued. "And get this, Rachel's name shows up as an authorized user on one of them." Nathan's stomach turned. It wasn't just betrayal, it was an elaborate scheme. But for what purpose? "I'll keep digging," Marcus said. "This guy's not clean, and neither is your wife." "Thanks, Marcus," Nathan said, ending the call. Later that night, Nathan sat alone in his study, the pieces of the puzzle coming together. Rachel wasn't just having an affair. She was conspiring with Langston to dismantle his life. The offshore accounts, the promises to the children, the sudden influx of luxury items, it all pointed to a larger plan. He opened a drawer and retrieved an old, unregistered phone he used for sensitive cases. He dialed another trusted ally, Detective Laura Green. "Laura, it's Nathan. I need a favor." "Anything for you," Laura said. "What's going on?" "I need surveillance on Peter Langston. Discreet but thorough. I also need to know if there are any active investigations tied to him." Laura didn't hesitate. "Consider it done." The next morning, Nathan awoke to a new message from Marcus. It was a scanned copy of a lease agreement, an expensive penthouse apartment in Midtown, paid for by Langston. The occupant? Rachel Caldwell. Nathan's pulse quickened as he stared at the document. It was no longer a matter of suspicion. The evidence was irrefutable. His wife was preparing to leave him, and Langston was orchestrating the entire thing. But why? As Nathan scrolled through the files, he found one more piece of information that made his blood run cold. It was a calendar entry on Langston's business itinerary, meeting with Caldwell children, final arrangements. Nathan's resolve hardened. Whatever Rachel and Langston were planning, it wasn't just about betrayal, it was about taking everything from him, including his children. He stood, his mind already formulating the next steps. Rachel and Langston had made one fatal mistake, they underestimated Nathan Caldwell. In the courtroom, he was known as a strategist, a tactician who dismantled his opponents piece by piece. Now, he would bring those same skills to bear on the enemies within his own home. The game had begun, and Nathan intended to win. Nathan Caldwell spent the next 2 days gathering evidence and fortifying his defenses. Every detail, every inconsistency in Rachel's story and Peter Langston's actions, pointed to a scheme that went beyond infidelity. It was personal, calculated, and meticulously planned. But now, Nathan was ready to counter their every move. It was Friday evening when Rachel arrived home from one of her so-called charity board meetings. Nathan had prepared himself for this moment, crafting his words like the opening statement of a high-stakes trial. "Busy day?" he asked as she entered the kitchen, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "Very," Rachel replied breezily, placing her designer handbag on the counter. She hesitated when she noticed Nathan's calm demeanor and the glass of wine waiting for her on the island. "I thought we could talk," Nathan said, gesturing to the wine. Rachel eyed him warily but took the seat across from him. "About what?" "About Peter Langston. About the children. About everything you've been hiding," Nathan said, his voice even. Rachel's hand froze halfway to the wineglass. "I don't know what you're talking about." Nathan leaned back, studying her. "Do you take me for a fool? I know about the offshore accounts. I know about the penthouse. I know about the meetings with Claire and Ethan." Rachel's face paled, but she recovered quickly, her mask slipping into place. "Nathan, this is ridiculous. You're paranoid." Nathan slid a folder across the counter. "Go ahead, open it." Rachel hesitated but eventually flipped it open. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and surveillance reports compiled by Marcus Hayes. "This is absurd," Rachel said, her voice trembling slightly. "You've been spying on me?" Nathan leaned forward, his eyes cold. "Spying? No, Rachel. I've been protecting myself. And apparently, that's something I should have started doing a long time ago." Rachel slammed the folder shut, her composure finally cracking. "You don't understand." "Then make me understand," Nathan interrupted. "Explain how your charity work involves secret accounts and a penthouse. Explain why you've been meeting with Peter behind my back." Rachel's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, Nathan saw genuine fear in her eyes. "You have nothing to say?" Nathan pressed. "Then let me tell you what I've pieced together. You and Langston are planning to take my children, destroy my reputation, and leave me with nothing. Sound about right?" Rachel's silence was confirmation enough. Later that night, Nathan found Ethan in his room, headphones on, engrossed in a video game. He knocked lightly, and Ethan turned, pulling off the headphones. "What's up, Dad?" Nathan sat on the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Have you and Claire been spending a lot of time with Peter?" Ethan shrugged. "Yeah, I guess. Mom likes him. Claire does too. He's nice." Nathan nodded, hiding his frustration. "Has he said anything about me? About your mom?" Ethan hesitated, his brow furrowing. "He said you're too busy to take care of us properly. That he'd give us more attention." Nathan's chest tightened, but he kept his tone neutral. "And what do you think?" Ethan looked away, guilt flickering across his face. "I don't know, Dad. Claire says Peter's cool, and she's excited about the Tokyo trip. But I don't want anything to change." Nathan placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Nothing is going to change, Ethan. Not if I can help it." Ethan looked up, his eyes wide. "Is something bad happening?" "Not if we stick together," Nathan said firmly. "I need you to trust me, okay?" Ethan nodded, and Nathan left the room, his resolve strengthening. The following morning, Marcus called with an update. "I've got something big, Nathan. Langston's involvement with Rachel isn't just personal, it's financial." "What do you mean?" Nathan asked, gripping the phone tightly. "There's a shell company in Rachel's name tied to one of Langston's offshore accounts. It looks like he's been funneling money into it for years. I also found references to a trust fund set up for your kids. If they leave the country, the money's transferred automatically." Nathan's blood ran cold. "What's the endgame?" My guess? They're setting you up to take the fall for something big. Langston's got a history of using people as scapegoats, and Rachel's helping him set you up. Nathan thanked Marcus and ended the call, his mind racing. He had suspected betrayal, but this was far worse than he imagined. Nathan called Detective Laura Green to share the new information. This isn't just about an affair, he said. They're orchestrating a fraud scheme, and I'm the fall guy. Laura's voice was steady. We'll need evidence, more than bank statements and suspicions. Can you get Rachel to slip up? Nathan considered this. I can try. But I need Langston surveilled closely. He's the mastermind. Done, Laura replied. But be careful, Nathan. Men like Langston don't play fair. That evening, Rachel was unusually quiet, her movements tense as she prepared dinner. Nathan decided to test her. Langston called me today, he said casually, pouring himself a glass of water. Rachel froze, the knife she was holding clattering against the cutting board. What? He wanted to meet. Said it was about you and the kids. Nathan kept his tone light, as if he didn't suspect a thing. Rachel turned slowly, her face a mask of confusion. That's strange. What did you tell him? I told him we'd talk about it as a family, Nathan said, watching her closely. Rachel's hand twitched toward her phone, and Nathan knew he'd struck a nerve. Is there something you want to tell me? He asked. Rachel forced a smile. No, of course not. I'm just surprised. Later that night, as Rachel slept, Nathan called Marcus again. She's rattled. I need to push her harder. Be careful, Marcus warned. If she realizes how much you know, she might make a desperate move. I'll be ready, Nathan assured him. Nathan then reviewed the data Marcus had compiled on the shell company. There were payments from Langston to key individuals, including a judge known for his leniency in fraud cases. Nathan made a note to dig deeper. Langston's network was vast, but every connection was a potential weak link. The next day, Nathan met with Laura in person to plan his next move. Rachel and Langston are too confident, he said. They think I'm blind to what they're doing. We need to use that. Laura nodded. If we can catch them in the act, financially or otherwise, it'll be airtight. Nathan agreed. Langston's arrogance is his weakness. He won't expect me to fight back until it's too late. Nathan returned home that evening to find Rachel on the phone, her voice low and hurried. She ended the call abruptly when she saw him, but not before Nathan caught the name Langston. The mask was slipping. Rachel was running out of lies, and Nathan was closing in on the truth. Whatever game they were playing, it was time to flip the board. Nathan's suspicions about Rachel and Langston were no longer just theories, they were supported by hard evidence. As he pieced together their intricate web of deceit, he realized the stakes were even higher than he had imagined. His reputation, his career, and, most importantly, his children's futures were all on the line. Now, it was time to act decisively. The day began with an early call from Marcus Hayes. You're not going to believe this, Marcus said. I found something that changes the game. Nathan's heart raced. What is it? Rachel's shell company isn't just tied to Langston's offshore accounts. It's also connected to a subsidiary of Langston's main venture capital firm. That subsidiary is under federal investigation for fraud. Nathan's grip tightened on the phone. How deep does it go? Deep, Marcus confirmed. If Rachel is linked to that investigation, she's not just in trouble, she's going to drag you down with her. Then we need to act fast, Nathan said. Do we have a contact at the federal level who can verify this? Marcus hesitated. There's one person, but she's a long shot. Sarah Mulligan, assistant U.S. attorney. She's tough but fair. If we bring her evidence, she might take the case. Nathan nodded to himself. Set up a meeting. That evening, Nathan sat with Ethan and Claire in the living room, feigning casual interest as they talked about their day. Claire, always eager to impress, launched into a detailed account of Peter Langston's latest, amazing, plans. Peter said he might take us to Tokyo for spring break, Claire gushed. Isn't that great? Nathan leaned back, maintaining a neutral expression. And when did Peter tell you this? Claire paused, her enthusiasm dimming slightly under Nathan's steady gaze. A few days ago. Mom mentioned it, too. She said it would be good for us to get away. Nathan glanced at Ethan, whose face was carefully blank. Did Peter say anything else? Claire hesitated, then shook her head. Not really. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. He, mentioned something about school. Like, looking at international programs. Nathan felt a cold knot tighten in his chest. International programs, he echoed. Yeah, Ethan said reluctantly. Like schools in Europe. He said they're better than anything here. Nathan nodded, his mind racing. Langston wasn't just trying to take his children on a vacation, he was laying the groundwork to move them out of the country. The next morning, Nathan met with Sarah Mulligan at a quiet cafe in Midtown. Marcus had accompanied him, bringing a file thick with evidence against Langston and Rachel. Sarah flipped through the documents, her sharp eyes scanning each page. This is serious, she said finally. If Langston is funneling money through a shell company tied to your wife, it's not just fraud, it's conspiracy. And if the kids are involved, it could escalate to custodial interference. Nathan leaned forward. Can you take the case? I'll need to verify everything, Sarah replied. But if it checks out, Langston's going to wish he'd never set foot in New York. What about Rachel? Nathan asked. Sarah's expression hardened. If she's complicit, she'll face charges, too. But we'll need her cooperation to take Langston down. Nathan nodded. He wasn't ready to forgive Rachel, but if she could help dismantle Langston's empire, he was willing to use her as a means to an end. That evening, Nathan decided to confront Rachel again, this time with leverage. He waited until the kids were asleep and found her in the study, scrolling through her phone. We need to talk, Nathan said, closing the door behind him. Rachel looked up, her expression wary. What now? Nathan placed a single page of the evidence file on the desk in front of her. It was a bank statement linking her shell company to Langston's fraudulent subsidiary. Her face went pale. Where did you get this? Does it matter? Nathan asked. The question is, how deep are you in this? Rachel's hands trembled as she picked up the paper. Nathan, it's not what you think. Then tell me what it is, he demanded. Because right now, it looks like you've been helping Langston set me up as a scapegoat for his crimes. Rachel opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her silence spoke volumes. Nathan continued, his voice cold. I met with a federal prosecutor today. If you cooperate, you might avoid prison. But if you don't, I'll make sure you go down with Langston. Tears filled Rachel's eyes. Nathan, I didn't know it would go this far. Peter said it was just financial restructuring, that it was harmless. Harmless? Nathan snapped. Do you call moving our kids to Europe harmless? Do you call destroying my career harmless? Rachel buried her face in her hands. I didn't know what to do. He made promises, about a better life, about security. Nathan stared at her, a mix of anger and pity swirling in his chest. Then you made your choice. Now it's time to face the consequences. Over the next few days, Nathan worked closely with Sarah Mulligan to solidify their case. Surveillance on Langston intensified, and Rachel reluctantly provided key details about his plans. He's arrogant, Rachel admitted during one of their meetings. He thinks he's untouchable. That's his mistake, Nathan replied. No one's untouchable. The breakthrough came when Marcus intercepted an encrypted message from Langston to one of his associates. The message outlined a plan to transfer millions of dollars to a hidden account in Switzerland, money that would disappear the moment Langston moved Nathan's children overseas. This is it, Sarah said when Marcus shared the message. This is the smoking gun. Nathan returned home that night, exhausted but determined. He found Claire in the kitchen, scrolling through photos on her phone. Dad, she asked hesitantly. Can I talk to you? Of course, Nathan said, sitting beside her. Claire hesitated, then showed him her phone. It was a photo of her with Langston, taken at a fancy restaurant. Do you like Peter? Nathan chose his words carefully. I think Peter is very good at making people like him. But that doesn't mean he's good for us. Claire frowned. Mom says he's going to help us have a better life. Nathan placed a hand on her shoulder. Claire, the best life we can have is together. Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't know. Nathan hugged her tightly. It's not your fault. None of this is your fault. As the clock ticked closer to Langston's downfall, Nathan felt the weight of what lay ahead. The evidence was airtight, the team ready to strike. But he knew the most difficult part was yet to come, facing Langston head-on and ensuring his children stayed by his side. The game was nearing its climax, and Nathan was determined to emerge victorious. The pieces of Nathan Caldwell's plan were finally coming together. With Rachel reluctantly cooperating, Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Mulligan building the case, and Marcus Hayes providing real-time intelligence, Nathan had the leverage he needed to strike the first blow. It was time to dismantle Peter Langston's carefully constructed empire and ensure his own family's safety. Nathan sat in his study, reviewing the latest report from Marcus. Langston's overseas accounts had been temporarily frozen under the guise of a routine audit triggered by the intercepted message about the Swiss transfer. The move would delay Langston's ability to act, buying Nathan and his team crucial time. Marcus called just as Nathan was finishing his notes. Langston's making a move, Marcus said, his voice brisk. He's scheduled a meeting tomorrow morning at the Ritz-Carlton with two of his closest associates. Nathan's mind raced. What's the purpose of the meeting? Damage control, most likely, Marcus replied. The account freeze is causing ripples. He's probably trying to figure out who's behind it. Nathan smirked. Then let's make sure he feels the pressure. The following morning, Nathan met with Sarah and Detective Laura Green in Sarah's office. The mood was tense but focused. We've got enough evidence to make an arrest, Sarah said, tapping a thick file on her desk. But we need to catch Langston in the act. If we can link him directly to the funds in the custodial interference plan, we'll have an airtight case. Laura nodded. We've got a team ready to move when you give the word. Nathan crossed his arms. What about Rachel? She knows the details of Langston's plan better than anyone. She needs to be involved. Sarah frowned. I'm not sure I trust her. She's been complicit in this scheme for years. I don't trust her either, Nathan admitted. But she's desperate, and she knows that cooperating is her only way out. If we use her strategically, she can help us. Sarah considered this and finally nodded. Fine, but she's on a tight leash. That evening, Nathan confronted Rachel again. This time, he needed her full cooperation. Langston has a meeting tomorrow, Nathan began. I want you to call him before it starts. Tell him you're worried about the account freeze and that you think I might be onto him. Rachel's eyes widened. If he suspects me, he'll cut me off completely. Or worse. Nathan's expression hardened. If you don't do this, you're going down with him. Is that what you want? Rachel hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Fine. But if I do this, I want your word, you'll make sure the kids don't hate me forever. Nathan didn't respond immediately. He knew that forgiveness was something only Claire and Ethan could decide for themselves. Finally, he said, help us, and I'll make sure the truth comes out. That's all I can promise. The following morning, Nathan waited in the surveillance van parked near the Ritz-Carlton, along with Marcus, Sarah, and Laura's team. Inside the hotel, Langston was meeting with his associates, blissfully unaware that Rachel's phone call had tipped off the authorities. Audio is live, Marcus said, adjusting his headset. Let's see what they're up to. Through the hidden microphones planted by Laura's team, Nathan and the others listened as Langston discussed his plans. The account freeze is a problem, but it's temporary, Langston said, his voice calm and confident. We'll reroute the funds through a new channel. The key is moving the kids before Caldwell catches on. Nathan clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. One of Langston's associates asked, "What if Caldwell figures it out?" Langston chuckled. "He's too busy playing defense. By the time he realizes what's happening, I'll be untouchable. The kids will be in Switzerland, and Rachel will have no choice but to follow." Nathan's blood ran cold. Langston wasn't just trying to take his children, he was planning to use them as leverage to control Rachel permanently. Sarah nodded to Laura. "That's enough. Move in." Moments later, Laura's team stormed the hotel suite. Langston and his associates were caught completely off guard as federal agents swarmed the room, confiscating laptops, phones, and documents. Langston's expression shifted from shock to fury when he spotted Nathan entering the room with Sarah. "You," he spat. "You think you've won?" Nathan stepped forward, his voice cold and controlled. "This isn't a game, Peter. You tried to destroy my family, and now you're going to answer for everything you've done." Langston sneered. "You're making a mistake. I have connections, you can't touch me." Nathan smiled faintly. "We'll see." As Langston was led away in handcuffs, Nathan felt a flicker of satisfaction. But he knew the fight wasn't over yet. Back at Sarah's office, the team began processing the evidence seized from Langston's meeting. Among the documents was a detailed outline of his plan to frame Nathan, including forged financial records implicating him in the fraudulent accounts. "This is gold," Sarah said, flipping through the files. "Not only does it clear your name, but it proves Langston's intent beyond a shadow of a doubt." Nathan exhaled, relief washing over him. "What about the kids?" Laura chimed in. "We flagged their passports and notified the schools. There's no way Langston can move them now." That evening, Nathan sat down with Claire and Ethan. They had heard about Langston's arrest on the news and were full of questions. "Is it true?" Claire asked, her voice trembling. "Did Peter try to take us away?" Nathan nodded. "It's true. He was using you as part of his plan to hurt me." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "But Mom knew, didn't she? She was helping him." Nathan hesitated, then said, "She made mistakes, Claire. Big ones. But she's trying to make it right now." Ethan, who had been silent, finally spoke. "So what happens now?" "Now we move forward," Nathan said firmly. "Together." Over the next few weeks, the case against Langston and his associates grew stronger. Rachel's testimony, combined with the evidence seized at the Ritz-Carlton, painted a damning picture of their crimes. Meanwhile, Nathan began rebuilding his relationship with Claire and Ethan. It wasn't easy, there were still moments of anger and confusion, but slowly, trust began to return. One evening, Claire approached Nathan with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Dad. For everything." Nathan hugged her tightly. "It's not your fault, Claire. None of this is." As Nathan watched his children laughing together in the living room, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Langston's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also reminded him of what truly mattered. His career, his reputation, those things could be rebuilt. But his family was irreplaceable. Langston had underestimated him, thinking he could outmaneuver a man who had spent his life fighting for justice. Now, Langston would face the consequences of his arrogance, and Nathan would ensure that his family emerged stronger than ever. The first strike had landed. The next move was Langston's, but Nathan was ready. Nathan Caldwell knew the fight against Peter Langston was reaching its climax. The evidence collected from the penthouse safe was irrefutable, and Rachel's cooperation had filled in critical gaps in the investigation. Still, Langston's resources and connections posed a threat. Nathan's focus now shifted to dismantling Langston's defenses completely and ensuring that justice prevailed, not just for himself, but for his children and the many lives Langston had harmed. In his cell, Langston wasn't idle. His high-powered legal team filed motions to dismiss key evidence, citing technicalities and alleging entrapment. Meanwhile, leaks to the media painted Langston as a victim of an overzealous prosecutor and a bitter ex-partner. The smear campaign against Nathan intensified, with anonymous tips claiming he had orchestrated the entire situation to frame Langston. Nathan reviewed the headlines with a grim expression. "Langston's trying to play the victim," he told Marcus over the phone. Marcus chuckled darkly. "Let him. Every move he makes gives us more leverage. He's like a cornered animal, dangerous, but predictable." Nathan's phone buzzed with an unexpected call from Sarah Mulligan. "Nathan, we have a development," she said. "One of Langston's former associates has come forward. He wants to cut a deal." "Who?" Nathan asked, his interest piqued. "Thomas Raines," Sarah replied. "He managed Langston's offshore accounts for years. He's willing to testify in exchange for immunity." Nathan considered this. "What's he offering?" "Documentation of every transaction Langston ever ordered, including payments to key officials and the setup of the trust fund for your kids," Sarah said. "It's enough to seal Langston's fate." Nathan nodded. "Set up the meeting. Let's hear what he has to say." The next day, Nathan and Sarah met with Raines in a secure location. The man was nervous, his eyes darting around as he handed over a USB drive. "This has everything," Raines said, his voice shaking. "Bank records, emails, even recordings of Langston giving instructions." He thought he was untouchable. Nathan studied the man. "Why come forward now?" Raines hesitated. "Langston was planning to cut me loose. I overheard him talking about it. He doesn't leave loose ends." "And you think we'll protect you?" Nathan asked, his tone sharp. Raines nodded. "I know too much. Langston will come after me if I don't cooperate." Sarah examined the USB drive. "If this checks out, it'll be the final nail in Langston's coffin." With Raines' evidence in hand, Sarah and her team worked around the clock to prepare for trial. The data on the USB drive confirmed Langston's role in multiple schemes, from financial fraud to custodial interference. It also revealed a darker side, Langston's involvement in pressuring whistleblowers and silencing dissent through intimidation. Nathan sat with Sarah in her office, reviewing the evidence. "This is more than enough to convict him," Sarah said. "But we need to keep the focus on the most egregious crimes, fraud, conspiracy, and the attempt to take your children." Nathan nodded. "Langston's lawyers will try to discredit everything. We need to make sure the jury sees him for who he really is." The trial began with intense media coverage. Reporters swarmed the courthouse, and cameras flashed as Nathan entered with Sarah and Rachel. Langston, now visibly gaunt and tense, sat at the defense table, flanked by his high-profile legal team. Sarah's opening statement was precise and powerful. This case is about power and manipulation, she told the jury. Peter Langston used his wealth and influence to exploit others, destroy families, and evade accountability. But today, we will hold him accountable. The prosecution's case unfolded meticulously. Rachel testified about her role in Langston's schemes, admitting her mistakes but painting a clear picture of his manipulation. Nathan's testimony was equally compelling, detailing Langston's attempts to destroy his reputation and steal his children. The most damning moment came when Sarah introduced Rain's recordings. Langston's own voice filled the courtroom, giving orders to set up the fraudulent accounts and discussing plans to discredit Nathan. The defense tried to counter with claims of entrapment and character attacks on Nathan and Rachel, but the evidence was overwhelming. During a recess, Nathan sat with Claire and Ethan in the courthouse lobby. Both teenagers looked nervous but determined. "Are we going to win?" Ethan asked. Nathan smiled reassuringly. "We already are. The truth is out, and Langston can't hide from it anymore." Claire hesitated, then said, "I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. For believing Peter, for doubting you." Nathan pulled her into a hug. "You don't need to apologize, Claire. None of this is your fault. What matters is that we're here together." Ethan chimed in. "We're with you, Dad. No matter what." Nathan felt a surge of pride and gratitude. Langston had tried to tear his family apart, but instead, they were stronger than ever. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. The courtroom was silent as the foreperson read the decision. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of custodial interference, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of financial misconduct, we find the defendant guilty. Langston's face hardened as the judge announced the sentence, 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. As the gavel struck, Nathan felt a wave of relief. It was over. In the weeks following the trial, Nathan focused on rebuilding his life. Langston's empire was dismantled, his assets seized, and his influence eradicated. Rachel moved out of the brownstone, honoring an agreement to let Nathan have full custody of Claire and Ethan. One evening, the three of them sat together in the living room, laughing over an old family photo album. It was a small but meaningful moment, a reminder that their bond had endured. "Dad?" Claire said softly. "Thanks for never giving up on us." Nathan smiled. "You're my kids. I'd do anything for you." With Langston's shadow finally lifted, Nathan found new purpose in his work. He partnered with Sarah and Marcus to create a legal initiative dedicated to exposing corporate corruption and protecting families from exploitation. At the launch event for the initiative, Nathan addressed the crowd. "Justice isn't just about punishment, it's about making sure no one else suffers the way we did. That's why we're here today." As he looked out at the audience, he saw Claire and Ethan in the front row, their faces full of pride. In that moment, Nathan realized that despite everything he'd lost, he had gained something far more valuable, a stronger, closer family and a renewed sense of purpose. Langston's schemes had failed, and his legacy was one of disgrace. But Nathan's story was one of resilience, justice, and love, a testament to the strength of a family united. With Peter Langston sentenced to 25 years in prison and his empire dismantled, Nathan Caldwell finally began to breathe freely again. The battle had been long and grueling, but it had revealed the strength of his family and the importance of resilience in the face of betrayal. Yet, as life began to settle, Nathan understood that there was still work to be done, not just for his family, but for others who might face similar injustices. Life in the Caldwell household was gradually returning to normal, though the scars left by Langston's betrayal still lingered. Rachel had moved out of the brownstone, giving Nathan full custody of Claire and Ethan. She had made her amends in court, but her relationship with her children was still strained. One Sunday afternoon, Rachel called Nathan. It was the first time they'd spoken since the trial. "I wanted to check on the kids," she said hesitantly. "How are they doing?" "They're adjusting," Nathan replied, his tone neutral. "It'll take time, but they're strong." Rachel hesitated, then said, "I hope one day they'll forgive me." "That's up to them," Nathan said firmly. "But if you want a chance at rebuilding that relationship, you'll have to prove you're willing to put their needs first." Rachel sighed. "I understand. Thank you for letting me know." After the call, Nathan sat in the living room, watching Claire and Ethan work on a school project together. Their laughter and easy camaraderie filled the house with warmth, a reminder that despite everything, they were still a family. Nathan's experience with Langston's schemes had ignited a new passion within him. He reached out to Sarah Mulligan and Marcus Hayes with a proposal to create a legal initiative aimed at exposing corporate corruption and protecting vulnerable families. "This isn't just about Langston," Nathan explained during their first strategy meeting. "There are others like him, people who think they can manipulate the system and destroy lives for their own gain. We need to make sure they're held accountable." Sarah nodded. "We've seen the damage these kinds of schemes can do. If we can prevent even one family from going through what you did, it'll be worth it." Marcus grinned. "Count me in. Besides, I've got plenty of contacts who'd love to help take down the next Langston." They decided to call the initiative the Justice Alliance, and within weeks, they were inundated with cases. Families, whistleblowers, and victims of corporate fraud reached out, seeking the kind of justice Nathan had fought so hard to achieve. As the dust settled, Nathan found himself having deeper conversations with Claire and Ethan about what had happened. One evening, as they sat together at the dining table, Claire asked a question that had clearly been weighing on her. "Dad, why did Mom do it?" she asked softly. "Why would she choose Peter over us?" Nathan took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes, people get caught up in promises that seem too good to be true. Your mom thought Peter could give her a better life, but she didn't see the damage he was causing until it was too late." Ethan frowned. "But she still hurt us. How do we forgive that?" Nathan placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means letting go of the anger so it doesn't control you. But forgiveness is a choice, Ethan. It's something you have to decide for yourself." Claire looked thoughtful. "Do you forgive her?" Nathan hesitated, then said, "I've accepted what she did, and I've made peace with it. But trust is different. That takes time to rebuild." Rachel, meanwhile, was slowly trying to rebuild her life. She had taken a job with a nonprofit organization and was attending therapy to address the choices that had led her down such a destructive path. She sent letters to Claire and Ethan every week, though they remained hesitant to respond. One day, Ethan approached Nathan with one of the letters. "She says she wants to meet us," he said. "What do you think?" Nathan studied his son's face, seeing both hope and fear. "I think it's your decision, Ethan. If you want to meet her, I'll support you. And if you're not ready, that's okay too." Ethan nodded. "I'll think about it." The Justice Alliance's first major case involved a pharmaceutical company accused of falsifying trial results for a new drug. The company's actions had endangered patients and defrauded investors, much like Langston's schemes. Nathan, Sarah, and Marcus worked tirelessly to build the case, uncovering a trail of falsified documents, offshore accounts, and whistleblower testimonies. After months of investigation, they presented their findings to federal prosecutors, resulting in multiple arrests and millions in restitution for the victims. At the press conference announcing the victory, Nathan spoke with conviction. "Justice is not just about punishment, it's about protecting those who can't protect themselves and ensuring that no one is above the law." The success of the case solidified the Justice Alliance's reputation, attracting even more high-profile cases. Nathan's dedication to the cause became a source of inspiration for his children, who saw firsthand the power of standing up for what was right. As the months passed, Claire and Ethan began to heal. They excelled in school and developed new hobbies. Claire joined a debate team, while Ethan started playing basketball. Nathan attended every game and debate meet, cheering them on from the sidelines. One evening, after a particularly spirited debate victory, Claire approached Nathan with a smile. "You know, Dad, I think I want to be a lawyer someday." Nathan's chest swelled with pride. "You'd make a great one, Claire. You've already got the sharp mind and the determination." Ethan chimed in. "Maybe I'll join her. We could start our own firm, Caldwell and Caldwell." Nathan laughed, the sound light and genuine. For the first time in months, he felt a deep sense of peace. His children were thriving, and his family was stronger than ever. 1 year after Langston's sentencing, Nathan stood in the Justice Alliance's new office, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline. The work ahead was daunting, but he felt ready for the challenge. Langston's betrayal had tested him in ways he never imagined, but it had also revealed his strength and the unwavering love of his children. As Claire and Ethan joined him for their weekly family dinner that evening, Nathan raised his glass in a toast. "To resilience," he said. "And to the family we've built." They clinked glasses, laughter filling the room. The scars of the past were still there, but they no longer defined them. Together, they were moving forward, united by love, trust, and an unshakable bond. With the shadow of Peter Langston's betrayal behind them, Nathan Caldwell and his children, Claire and Ethan, began to embrace a future full of hope and possibilities. The Justice Alliance flourished, Rachel sought redemption, and the family grew closer than ever. But while they had achieved a hard-fought peace, life continued to present challenges that tested their strength and resilience. The Justice Alliance's reputation as a force against corporate corruption was spreading. Nathan, Sarah Mulligan, and Marcus Hayes found themselves inundated with cases, ranging from whistleblower allegations to complex fraud schemes. One case in particular caught Nathan's attention: a developer accused of displacing low-income families under the guise of urban renewal projects. "This one's personal," Nathan told Sarah during their strategy meeting. "My family grew up in one of those neighborhoods. We're going to make sure these people have a voice." Sarah nodded. "We've already started compiling evidence. If we can prove they falsified permits or coerced residents, we can build a solid case." Nathan felt a spark of determination. The fight wasn't just about justice, it was about standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Rachel continued her path of redemption, though it wasn't without setbacks. She had secured a position at a nonprofit organization focused on supporting families affected by corporate fraud, using her experiences to educate others about the dangers of manipulation and greed. One afternoon, she called Nathan with an update. "I've been asked to speak at a conference about my role in the Langston case," she said hesitantly. "I think it's important to share my story, but I wanted to let you and the kids know first." Nathan appreciated the gesture. "Do what you think is right, Rachel. But remember, actions speak louder than words. If you want to rebuild trust with Claire and Ethan, showing them you've changed will mean more than any speech." Rachel agreed. "Thank you, Nathan. I'll keep that in mind." As the Justice Alliance took on more cases, Nathan found himself reflecting on how far they'd come. Their latest victory, a landmark settlement against a pharmaceutical company accused of exploiting vulnerable communities, brought national attention to their work. During the celebration at the office, Marcus raised a toast. "To Nathan Caldwell, the man who turned a personal tragedy into a mission for justice." Nathan smiled, clinking glasses with his colleagues. "This is a team effort. And we're just getting started." Meanwhile, Claire was thriving in school and preparing for college applications. One evening, she approached Nathan with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Dad, I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do," she said. "I've decided to study law. I want to help people the way you do." Nathan's heart swelled with pride. "You'll be incredible, Claire. And if you ever need advice, you know where to find me." Claire grinned. "Don't worry, I'll keep you busy. I might need help with all those legal briefs." Ethan, listening from the couch, chimed in. "Great, another lawyer in the family. I guess I'll stick to basketball." Nathan laughed. "There's room for both, Ethan. But if you ever want to argue a case, I'm sure Claire will let you practice with her." Rachel's efforts to rebuild her relationship with Claire and Ethan were slow but steady. She continued to send letters and occasionally reached out to Nathan for updates. One day, Ethan surprised Nathan by saying he wanted to meet her. "Why now?" Nathan asked gently. I want to hear what she has to say," Ethan replied. "I don't know if I can forgive her, but I need to understand." Nathan nodded. "I'll support whatever decision you make. And if you want me there, I'll be by your side." Ethan agreed, and they arranged a meeting at a nearby cafe. Rachel arrived looking nervous but hopeful. The conversation was emotional, with Rachel apologizing repeatedly and Ethan expressing his hurt and anger. By the end of the meeting, there was no resolution, but there was a sense of progress, a small step toward healing. The urban renewal case Nathan was leading for the Justice Alliance finally went to trial. The courtroom was packed with displaced families, reporters, and legal teams. Nathan delivered a powerful opening statement, painting a vivid picture of the harm caused by the developers' greed. "These families trusted the system," Nathan said, his voice steady and resolute. "They believed their homes and communities were protected. Instead, they were exploited and discarded. Today, we fight to restore their dignity and hold those responsible accountable." The trial lasted weeks, with emotional testimonies from families and damning evidence from whistleblowers. When the jury returned a guilty verdict, cheers erupted in the courtroom. Nathan shook hands with the families he had fought for, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "This is why we do what we do," he told Sarah as they left the courthouse. "To give people hope." As the anniversary of Langston's sentencing approached, Nathan and his children reflected on how far they had come. They decided to commemorate the occasion with a weekend trip to the mountains, a chance to leave the past behind and focus on the future. Around a campfire one evening, Ethan turned to Nathan. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if Langston got away with it?" Nathan considered the question. "I do. But I also think about how we came together to stop him. We didn't let him win. And that's what matters." Claire nodded. "You taught us to fight for what's right, Dad. That's something no one can take away." Nathan smiled, his heart full. "You're my greatest victory. Both of you." The Justice Alliance continued to thrive, with Nathan at the helm. His work not only brought justice to those in need but also inspired his children to pursue their passions and make a difference in the world. Claire received acceptance letters from several prestigious universities and chose to attend Columbia, following in her father's footsteps. Ethan excelled in basketball, earning a scholarship to a local college. One evening, as they gathered for dinner, Nathan raised his glass in a toast. To family, to justice, and to the future. They clinked glasses, laughter filling the room. The scars of the past were still there, but they no longer defined them. Together, they had built a legacy of resilience, love, and hope, a testament to the strength of a family united. The Caldwell family had come a long way from the shadow cast by Peter Langston's betrayal. With justice served and the Justice Alliance thriving, Nathan Caldwell, Claire, and Ethan were finally stepping into a brighter future. However, the journey of redemption wasn't just Nathan's, it was also Rachel's. As she worked to rebuild her life and mend the fractured bonds with her children, the family took tentative steps toward a new chapter. Rachel's invitation to speak at a high-profile conference on corporate corruption marked a turning point in her journey. The event was being held at a prestigious venue in New York, and she had agonized over whether to accept the offer. Ultimately, she decided to use her experience to warn others about the dangers of aligning with people like Langston. Nathan learned of the speech through Sarah Mulligan. "She's doing it," Sarah said. "I've seen the agenda. She's listed as a keynote speaker." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Do you think she'll follow through?" "She knows this is her chance to prove she's serious about change," Sarah replied. "It's a gamble, but if she pulls it off, it could help her heal those wounds with Claire and Ethan." Nathan nodded. "I hope she's ready for the questions. She won't just be facing a crowd, she'll be facing herself." The day of the conference, Rachel stood on stage in front of a packed auditorium. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the microphone, but she took a deep breath and began. "My name is Rachel Caldwell, and I'm here today because I made mistakes that nearly destroyed my family," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I was seduced by promises of wealth and power. I aligned myself with someone who manipulated me into believing he could provide a better life. In doing so, I betrayed the people I loved most." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Peter Langston's schemes didn't just harm my family. They harmed countless others. And while I can't undo the damage I caused, I can use my story as a cautionary tale. Don't let greed blind you to what truly matters. Don't let ambition cost you your integrity." As she finished, the audience erupted into applause. Rachel's speech was met with praise from advocates and survivors alike, many of whom approached her afterward to share their stories. For the first time in years, Rachel felt a glimmer of hope that she could rebuild her life, and her relationships with her children. Rachel's speech reached Claire through a viral video clip shared on social media. Watching her mother's raw, honest words struck a chord she hadn't expected. One evening, Claire approached Nathan in the living room. "I think I want to see Mom," she said hesitantly. "I don't know if I can forgive her yet, but I want to hear her side." Nathan nodded, respecting her decision. "Take your time, Claire. You don't have to rush into anything you're not ready for." A few days later, Claire met Rachel at a small cafe. The meeting was emotional but productive, with Rachel expressing deep regret and Claire cautiously opening up about her own pain. "I don't trust you yet," Claire admitted. "But I'm willing to give you a chance. For now." Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her face. "That's more than I deserve, Claire. Thank you." While Claire took steps toward reconciliation, Ethan remained hesitant. He focused on school and basketball, finding solace in his routine. However, Nathan noticed the emotional toll the situation was taking on his son. One evening, Nathan joined Ethan in the backyard, where he was practicing free throws. "You've been quiet lately," Nathan said, catching the ball as it bounced toward him. Ethan shrugged. "Just busy, I guess." Nathan handed the ball back. "It's okay to feel conflicted about your mom. You don't have to decide how you feel right away." Ethan looked up, his expression pained. "I don't know if I can ever forgive her, Dad. She almost let Langston take us away from you." Nathan placed a hand on his shoulder. "Forgiveness is about finding peace for yourself, Ethan. Take your time. No one's rushing you." The Justice Alliance took on its most ambitious case yet, a multinational conglomerate accused of exploiting workers in developing countries. The case involved layers of corruption, false documentation, and intimidation tactics. "This one's going to be a fight," Sarah said during their strategy meeting. "But if we win, it'll send a message that no one is above accountability." Nathan nodded. "Let's make it count." The case reignited Nathan's passion for justice. As he worked late nights with Sarah and Marcus, he often thought about the lessons he was imparting to his children: resilience, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what's right. As the months passed, the Caldwell family continued to heal. Claire began her freshman year at Columbia, pursuing a double major in law and social justice. She often called Nathan to discuss her classes, and he marveled at her dedication and intelligence. Ethan, now a high school senior, was excelling in basketball and preparing for college applications. Though he hadn't yet reconnected with Rachel, he had begun to talk about her more openly, a sign that he was slowly processing his feelings. One weekend, the family gathered for a barbecue at the brownstone. Claire and Ethan teased each other as they prepared food, and Nathan watched them with a content smile. "Everything okay, Dad?" Claire asked, noticing his expression. Nathan nodded. "Better than okay. Seeing you two like this, it's all I've ever wanted." Rachel respected Ethan's distance but remained hopeful. She continued to write letters and occasionally reached out to Nathan for updates. "I'm not giving up," she told him during one call. "I know I have a long way to go, but I'm willing to keep trying." Nathan's response was measured but kind. "Just be patient. Let him come to you when he's ready." The Justice Alliance's case against the multinational conglomerate culminated in a landmark verdict. The company was found guilty of multiple violations, resulting in hefty fines and systemic reforms. The victory cemented the Justice Alliance's reputation as a powerhouse for accountability and change. At the post-trial celebration, Marcus raised a toast. To Nathan Caldwell, the man who turned personal pain into public justice. Nathan smiled, clinking glasses with his team. This is just the beginning. As life settled into a new rhythm, Nathan reflected on the journey that had brought him and his family to this point. The trials they had faced had tested their strength, but they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united. One evening, as Nathan sat on the porch watching the sunset, Claire joined him with 2 cups of coffee. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how far we've come," Nathan replied. "And how much there's still to do." Claire smiled. "We'll do it together." Nathan nodded, his heart full. "Yes, we will." As the Caldwell family embraced their renewed sense of purpose, life moved forward with a mix of hope and challenges. The Justice Alliance expanded its reach, Claire thrived at Columbia, and Ethan prepared to take the next big step in his life. Meanwhile, Nathan continued to focus on ensuring that the lessons learned from Peter Langston's betrayal served as a foundation for a brighter future, not just for his family, but for others as well. Claire's first semester at Columbia was nothing short of transformative. She threw herself into her studies with the same intensity Nathan recognized from her childhood. Her professors praised her sharp mind and her commitment to justice, often noting her uncanny ability to see through complex problems and find solutions. One evening, during a phone call with Nathan, Claire shared her excitement about a moot court competition. "We're arguing a case about corporate fraud, Dad," she said. "It's so much like what you deal with at the Justice Alliance." Nathan chuckled. "You'll crush it, Claire. Just remember to stay focused on the facts and use your passion to make your case." "I learned from the best," Claire replied, her voice warm with gratitude. Ethan, meanwhile, was gearing up for his senior year basketball season and college applications. He had already received interest from several universities, but his top choice was a local school with a strong athletics program and a focus on community outreach. One evening, as they shot hoops in the backyard, Ethan opened up to Nathan. "Dad, I've been thinking about what I want to do after basketball." "What's on your mind?" Nathan asked, passing him the ball. "I want to study education," Ethan said, sinking a perfect three-pointer. "I've been volunteering at the rec center, helping kids with homework and sports. It feels good to give back." Nathan smiled, pride swelling in his chest. "That's a noble path, Ethan. You'll make a great mentor." Ethan grinned. "Thanks, Dad. I learned from a pretty great one." Rachel continued her efforts to rebuild her relationship with her children. She maintained her role at the nonprofit and began hosting workshops on recognizing and resisting manipulation. Her talks gained traction, and she became a sought-after speaker in advocacy circles. One day, she received a surprise call from Ethan. "Hey, Mom," he said hesitantly. "I've been reading your letters. I think I'm ready to talk." Rachel's voice cracked with emotion. "Ethan, thank you. I've been waiting for this." They arranged to meet at a small diner, where their conversation was tentative but heartfelt. Rachel listened as Ethan shared his anger, confusion, and pain, acknowledging the harm her actions had caused. "I can't promise to forgive you right away," Ethan said. "But I want to try." Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her face. "That's more than I deserve, Ethan. Thank you for giving me a chance." The Justice Alliance was thriving, with new cases pouring in from across the country. Nathan, Sarah, and Marcus hired additional staff to manage the workload, including young attorneys eager to make a difference. One particularly challenging case involved a tech company accused of violating privacy laws. The case garnered national attention, with Nathan at the forefront of the investigation. "This one's tricky," Marcus said during a strategy meeting. "The company has some powerful allies." "Good," Nathan replied with a steely gaze. "The bigger they are, the harder they fall." The trial was grueling, with the tech company's legal team pulling every trick in the book. But Nathan's meticulous preparation and Sarah's sharp courtroom skills ultimately led to a resounding victory. The company was fined billions, and sweeping reforms were implemented to protect consumers. As the holiday season approached, Nathan decided to host a family dinner at the brownstone. It would be the first time Claire, Ethan, and Rachel were all together since Langston's trial. The evening began with some awkward tension, but the warmth of the season soon softened the atmosphere. Claire shared stories about her classes, Ethan talked about his basketball season, and Nathan regaled them with tales from the Justice Alliance's latest cases. Rachel, for her part, listened attentively, occasionally chiming in with thoughtful comments. She avoided discussing the past directly, instead focusing on the present and showing her children that she was committed to change. By the end of the night, laughter filled the room, and the family felt a sense of unity they hadn't experienced in years. Later that evening, after Claire and Ethan had gone to bed, Rachel stayed behind to talk with Nathan. "Thank you for letting me be part of tonight," she said. "It means more than I can say." Nathan nodded. "They needed to see you've changed. Tonight was a step in the right direction." Rachel hesitated, then said, "Do you think we'll ever be able to put all of this behind us?" Nathan's expression softened. "The past will always be there, Rachel. But what matters is how we move forward. For the kids, for ourselves, it's about what we do now." Rachel smiled faintly. "You're a better man than I deserve, Nathan." "It's not about me," Nathan replied. "It's about them." As the new year began, the Caldwell family felt a renewed sense of purpose. Claire excelled at Columbia, Ethan prepared for college, and Nathan continued his work with the Justice Alliance. Rachel maintained her efforts to rebuild trust, and though the road was long, progress was being made. One evening, as Nathan sat in his study reviewing a case, Claire called him with exciting news. "Dad, guess what? I won the moot court competition." Nathan beamed with pride. "I knew you would." "Congratulations, Claire." "Thanks, Dad," she said. "I couldn't have done it without you." After hanging up, Nathan leaned back in his chair, reflecting on how far they had come. The betrayal that once threatened to destroy them had instead forged an unbreakable bond. They were stronger, wiser, and more united than ever. Langston's shadow no longer loomed over their lives. Instead, the Caldwell family had built a legacy of resilience, love, and justice, one that would guide them for generations to come. The Caldwell family had finally found their rhythm. While the scars of betrayal and manipulation still lingered, they were no longer defined by them. Nathan Caldwell, his children Claire and Ethan, and even Rachel were charting new courses in their lives, forging bonds that felt stronger than ever. Ethan's final basketball season in high school was nothing short of spectacular. He led his team to the state championship, earning recognition from college scouts. One evening, after a game-winning performance, Nathan found Ethan sitting on the bleachers, looking reflective. "You played an incredible game tonight," Nathan said, sitting beside him. Ethan smiled faintly. "Thanks, Dad. It feels good, but it's not just about the games anymore." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Ethan looked down at the court. "I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do with my life. Basketball's great, but I want to help people, like you do. Maybe through education or mentoring kids." Nathan's chest swelled with pride. "Whatever path you choose, Ethan, I'll be right there with you. You have the heart to make a difference." Ethan nodded, a quiet determination settling in his expression. "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot." Claire's journey at Columbia was just as impressive. Her professors lauded her analytical skills and her ability to craft compelling arguments. She joined the law review, balancing her studies with a growing passion for advocacy. One day, she called Nathan with exciting news. "Dad, I got an internship at the Legal Aid Society." Nathan's smile was audible through the phone. "That's incredible, Claire. What will you be working on?" "Tenant rights cases," she said. "Helping people fight back against unfair evictions and landlords. It feels meaningful, you know." Nathan couldn't have been prouder. "I know exactly what you mean. You're going to do amazing work, Claire." Rachel remained steadfast in her efforts to prove her commitment to change. She continued her work at the nonprofit, mentoring survivors of corporate fraud and giving lectures on the importance of accountability. Though her relationship with Ethan and Claire was still fragile, she made consistent efforts to rebuild trust. One afternoon, Rachel invited Ethan to visit the nonprofit where she worked. Hesitant but curious, Ethan agreed. During the visit, he saw firsthand the impact of Rachel's work, watching as she spoke to a group of young adults about recognizing manipulation and reclaiming their lives. Afterward, Rachel approached Ethan cautiously. "I know I have a long way to go, but I hope you can see that I'm trying." Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I can see that, Mom. It's a start." Landmark case. The Justice Alliance's next major case involved a multinational energy corporation accused of environmental negligence. The case required months of research and countless hours of preparation, with Nathan leading the charge. "This is bigger than anything we've tackled before," Marcus said during a strategy meeting. "If we win, it could set a precedent for holding corporations accountable for environmental harm." Nathan nodded. "Then we need to give it everything we've got. This isn't just about the law, it's about protecting people and their futures." The trial was grueling, with the corporation's legal team deploying every resource at their disposal. But Nathan and his team remained steadfast, presenting a mountain of evidence and compelling testimony from affected communities. In the end, the jury delivered a resounding verdict, guilty on all counts. The corporation was ordered to pay billions in damages and implement sweeping reforms to prevent future harm. To celebrate their collective victories, Nathan decided to take Claire and Ethan on a long-overdue vacation. They chose a cabin in the mountains, far from the noise of the city. The trip was filled with laughter, hiking, and quiet moments by the fire. One evening, as they roasted marshmallows, Claire asked a question that caught Nathan off guard. "Do you ever think about what life would be like if Langston never came into the picture?" Nathan considered the question carefully. "I do. But as much as I wish we hadn't gone through those struggles, I think they shaped us. They showed us how strong we are, how much we can overcome." Ethan nodded. "Yeah. I guess we wouldn't be the same without it." Claire smiled. "And we wouldn't have this. The three of us, together." Nathan felt a deep sense of gratitude as he looked at his children. "You're right. And I wouldn't trade this for anything." Upon returning from the vacation, Claire surprised Nathan by suggesting they invite Rachel to dinner. "I think it's time, Dad," she said. "I want to see if we can have a normal conversation." Nathan agreed, and they invited Rachel over for a simple meal at the brownstone. The evening started with some awkwardness, but gradually, the tension eased. They shared stories, laughed over old memories, and even found common ground in their mutual love for Claire and Ethan. As Rachel left that evening, she turned to Nathan with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for this. It means more than you know." Nathan simply nodded. "It's a step forward. Let's keep it that way." As the months passed, the Caldwell family continued to grow stronger. Nathan balanced his work at the Justice Alliance with his role as a father, watching with pride as Claire and Ethan pursued their dreams. Rachel remained a part of their lives, cautiously rebuilding her relationships with her children. One evening, Nathan stood on the porch, watching the sunset. Claire joined him, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Thinking about the future?" she asked. "Always," Nathan replied with a smile. "There's a lot to look forward to." Claire nodded. "You've taught us so much, Dad. About resilience, integrity, and fighting for what's right. I hope we make you proud." Nathan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You already have, Claire. Both of you have." Moved forward, they carried the lessons of their past with them, lessons of resilience, love, and justice. Together, they built a legacy that would inspire others for generations to come. The Caldwell family had weathered betrayal, loss, and immense challenges, emerging stronger and more united than ever. With Nathan Caldwell at the helm of the Justice Alliance, Claire thriving at Columbia, and Ethan preparing to start college, the future looked brighter than it had in years. Part 13 marks the culmination of their journey, a celebration of their resilience, achievements, and the legacy they were building together. Ethan's high school graduation was a momentous occasion. Dressed in his cap and gown, he stood tall, his pride mirrored in the faces of Nathan, Claire, and even Rachel, who had joined them for the ceremony. As Ethan's name was called, cheers erupted from the family section. After the ceremony, they gathered for photos. Claire hugged her brother tightly. "Congratulations, Ethan. You're going to crush it in college." Ethan grinned. "Thanks, Claire. And don't worry, I'll still beat you at hoops whenever you're home." Nathan placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You've worked hard for this, son. I'm proud of the man you're becoming." Rachel stood nearby, her eyes brimming with tears. "Ethan, I'm so proud of you," she said softly. Ethan nodded, his expression kind but reserved. "Thanks, Mom." Claire's summer internship at the Legal Aid Society brought her closer to her dream of becoming an advocate for justice. Her first big assignment involved assisting tenants who were being unfairly evicted from their homes. The case reminded her of Nathan's battles with corporate greed, and she poured her heart into the work. One evening, she called Nathan to share her progress. "Dad, we're filing a motion tomorrow to stop the evictions. It's a small win, but it feels so good to make a difference." Nathan's voice was filled with pride. "That's not a small win, Claire. It's a huge step forward, for those families and for you. Keep fighting." The Justice Alliance reached new heights, opening offices in 3 additional cities. Their reputation as a powerhouse for corporate accountability attracted talented attorneys and advocates from across the country. At the grand opening of their Los Angeles office, Nathan delivered a speech that encapsulated the Alliance's mission. Justice isn't just about laws, it's about people. It's about protecting the vulnerable, holding the powerful accountable, and ensuring that every voice is heard. That's what the Justice Alliance stands for. As the audience applauded, Nathan reflected on how far they'd come. Langston's betrayal had once threatened to destroy everything he held dear, but now it was the foundation for a legacy of justice and resilience. To celebrate Ethan's upcoming departure for college and Claire's success at her internship, Nathan hosted a family dinner at the brownstone. Rachel joined them, and the evening was filled with laughter, stories, and hope for the future. At one point, Claire raised her glass. "To Dad," she said. "For showing us what it means to fight for what's right and to never give up." Ethan followed suit. "And for always being there, no matter what." Nathan, deeply moved, raised his own glass. "To family," he said. "You two are my greatest achievements." Rachel, sitting quietly, added, "And to second chances." As summer turned to fall, Ethan prepared to move into his college dorm. On the morning of his departure, Nathan helped him load the car while Claire teased him about forgetting half his belongings. At the dorm, Nathan stood back as Ethan greeted his new roommates and set up his space. When it was time to say goodbye, Nathan pulled his son into a hug. "Be yourself, Ethan," Nathan said. "Work hard, stay kind, and remember, you've got a family that's always in your corner." Ethan nodded, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Thanks, Dad. I won't let you down." Rachel continued her journey of redemption, finding deeper fulfillment in her work at the nonprofit. She started leading a mentorship program for women rebuilding their lives after betrayal and manipulation, using her own story as an example of growth and accountability. Her relationship with Claire and Ethan remained a work in progress, but there was progress nonetheless. They began exchanging more frequent texts and calls, and Rachel was invited to occasional family dinners. The road ahead was long, but for the first time, Rachel felt she was earning her place in their lives again. One evening, Nathan sat on the porch of the brownstone, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. Claire joined him, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Thinking about the past?" she asked. "Always," Nathan replied with a smile. "But tonight, I'm thinking about the future." Claire nodded. "You've built something incredible, Dad. Not just the Justice Alliance, but us, this family." Nathan looked at his daughter, pride shining in his eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you and Ethan. You're my reason for everything." As the stars appeared in the night sky, Nathan felt a profound sense of peace. The battles they had fought, the pain they had endured, and the victories they had won had all led to this moment, a moment of love, hope, and unshakable strength. The Caldwell family's story was one of resilience, redemption, and justice. They had turned tragedy into triumph, building a legacy that would inspire others for generations to come. As Claire and Ethan pursued their dreams, and as Nathan continued his work with the Justice Alliance, they knew that their bond, strengthened by the challenges they had faced together, would endure. In the end, the Caldwell family proved that even in the face of betrayal and adversity, love and determination could forge a brighter future. Together, they had created something unbreakable, a family built on trust, forgiveness, and the courage to fight for what truly mattered.